Here I am. I'm Trey Bolt, and I just reviewed the movie Concussion, which has direct correlation to what I am, doing my research project on. And it was very useful information from the movie that I could use from it. But I watched the movie in the own comfort of my dorm, and that's where I'm recording today. And this Concussion movie, definitely taught me a lot because it's about the a very, very highly accredited doctor who, you know, realized, what CTE was. Obviously, being a huge, huge, major brain injury that has direct correlation to the NFL and where the game was standing. But what I investigated was, what exactly um, came out of finding and discovering what CTE was, because at at one time, you know, no one knew what it meant. For the movie's sake, I mean that's what they dive into, and the main the main doctor discovers about the football player who is a Pro Bowl or a Hall of Famer actually, Mike Webster of the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the best centers of all time, and he was a neurologist, and he not Mike Weber, but obviously the doctor, who's a Nigerian doctor, but he did the autopsy on his body and his brain, and just discovered all the lasting impacts that had and what led up to the cause of his death. But that's just what I was investigating, what I needed to dive into for this, and I definitely it was a definitely well worth watching for this film because it gave me the exact information I needed. Just everything about this movie, is what I'm researching, and the CTE is what you know the injuries that these NFL players are sustaining. So it was so obvious that this movie is exactly what I needed to investigate. It was the best research I could get, because this doctor, he dives right in and everything that I needed to know. Um, but because like me personally, my goal was, for discovering in this project, was ways that we could help NFL players and just honestly all athletes that play head-to-head contact sports, and how we can improve it, how we can make things better. And this movie is perfect for that because it discovered CTE, and it's one of the craziest injuries we have. And I needed to dive into this, and this movie proved that exactly for me. My goal of watching this film, though, just obviously was to learn, everything that CTE was, but also to figure out how it was discovered, because this was not a known thing. In the movie, they didn't even know that the the NFL player Mike Webster had any problems with his brain at the initial the initial look at um, his autopsy. So they didn't even know that anything was wrong with him. Uh, he just had mental problems, and there was no clear there's no clear view of why exactly he had these medical problems. He had sight problems, and he just was a mental wreck. This guy was insane, and he was only 50 years old, so there wasn't any explanation for why what he was doing, and why it was happening. But ultimately, his like this mental illness led to him committing suicide. And obviously, when people are getting that mentally ill and going to that extent, there needs to be something done about it. And that what was important to me, because I don't want to see more people losing lives the way guys like Mike Webster did, and we need to find improvements. And that's why this whole movie, looking into the movie and doing research on this whole entirety of concussions and the CTE and just the correlation with football and everything just was very important to me because I'm a huge football fan, and I want to see this sport continue to be played, but it needs to be played in a safer way, because if it's continued like this, the sport's gonna go extinct, and that's the sad reality of it. But we need to keep people safe, and if we don't have that, then there really can't be football. Because life is more important than football, as hard as it may seem to some. I think anyone would say that if they were talking about their child, if they realized the risks that they were putting on the line, to say, you know, letting my son play the sport that could kill them by the age of 50 or younger. I mean, I don't think anybody would want to put their child in that position. And that's exactly what this movie looks into and why it is so important. And that's why I investigated it. And I'm very glad I did, because it has given me so much useful information. The data I collected from this particular film was just everything linked to what CTE was, because the whole film went through the findings of CTE through cutting open the NFL player Mike Webster, who was referred to as Iron Mike, and this is what the breakthrough was. He had to cut up the brain of of the suicidal man, um, and discover that because it wasn't showing up on regular CT scans, it showed through the thorough investigation, that he put under a microscope, and found that these players, their heads were damaged from playing football, from the constant collisions that were taking place, and that was just everything that I discovered through that. Um, but the fact that there were, in the movie they said there were 12, there were 12 players in the last like couple years when this film was made that had died of just mental illness, like just the fact that they had become suicidal, and it led them to do such horrific things. And when they checked their brain, like with the regular CT scan, that nothing showed up. And so what they learned from the doctor, who's Dr. Amalu, he learned that he really had to cut and dive in, like really just dive right into the brain and figure out this information, why these players are committing suicide at such a young age, because there was just countless players who just battled with these severe head injuries. And what I learned from this, which was my findings and what I accomplished from this, is that what he is talking about is when in football, when they have head collisions, when they go head to head, what happens is how the Dr. Amale explained it is, compared to animals, like a woodpecker is meant to make constant collision, and they are continuously just pecking, at the tree. That's what they're meant to do, and they have something in their brain that protects it. So when their head is constantly moving back and forth, it's not getting brain damage. It's like it's a protector basically. Just goes all the way around the brain, and protects it from just colliding and just ruining the mental stability of differences with humans. When obviously looking at football is the most specific way of looking at it. When humans, when they go head to head, or two helmets going into each other, we don't have a protector in our brain or around our brain, protecting our against our skull. And the way that the Dr. Amale showed it was he had a jar with water in it, and then there was a brain in there. So when we do make the collision, your head's just going boom right into your skull. There's nothing to protect it, and that's why head injuries are so severe. And what he revealed is a normal hit in the NFL produces 100 uh, G-force, and what it takes for a concussion, just a regular concussion, is just 60 G's. So, I mean, that impact on these players is shown to be monumental. And obviously, the fact that, the suicide rates and, just everything that was happening. But, the worst part about it in this film is that the NFL refused to, take this information in, and, they just completely denied it, had cover up schemes all the way through, and just didn't give Dr. Male a chance. Just thought he was some voodoo African doctor. Didn't know what he was talking about, but he was, just education wise, backed up more than anyone I've ever seen in my life. He just had degrees on degrees, and the NFL, they just refused to acknowledge this just because of the fact that football is the number one sport in America, and they didn't want anything like this tarnishing its reputation, and just down because they didn't want a bad image. But what I learned from this, and I used to refuse to watch this movie because I am a huge football fan, NFL fan, and I was just like, man, they're gonna destroy the league with this information, and because there are a lot of rumors that the NFL could be going extinct in 20, 30 years, like maybe even closer than that, and that's scary. But as a human being, and possibly a future father, I would not want my kids to ever have to go through what these NFL players endured during their playing career, and obviously everything that happened after. But I definitely needed to watch this film. Definitely gave me great insight, and obviously I went into this topic because I had my own concussion last fall, and I really wanted to look into it because it's just a crazy, crazy concept. But my next step will be to investigate, how so did the NFL hide this information up, and why, and what the NFL is doing after this movie, and what were the consequences of it for the NFL. And that's everything I needed, and I just hope that this is going to be a huge step for my paper.